Yes. And my husband, thankfully, he told me he couldn't hear us. You guys can still hear me though, right?
Yes.
Through
Yep, I
Zoom,
can
you
hear
should.
you.
Yeah. So Turtle, I found a setting that I just changed. Tell me if you can hear us. So yeah, you can hear us now. We're gonna keep. So now I'm gonna keep talking so he can listen.
You
um,
married a turtle?
my name, yes, his name is Turtle. I've got a funny story about that. He says it's what. Keep listening, just make sure it doesn't echo and stuff. So with the Zoom, the other piece of software I use is called OBS. Maybe you guys have you ever used it? It's called, what is it? Open Broadcasting System or something. It's software to capture stuff on your screen and different sources, and I'll like arrange them just so, and I can layer a bunch of stuff. Like you'll see when you go to the YouTube, there's like Pyragraph TV logo, and then actually right now I'm gonna turn it off and show the Chicago Joe title page, and you can like switch. It's cool, and like sometimes you'll make like title screens, for like Billy McCall, author. I didn't have time to do all that this time, but and then you connect it to YouTube in the back.
Wow.
Pretty fun. It's fun. It's like a lot of twiddly bits, and a lot of stuff can go wrong, but it usually has gone okay.
I looked into using that when we were live streaming a lot of our events during the pandemic of Quimby's.
Yeah.
And I wanted to use it, but our computers are so old that I couldn't get the software to be compatible with what we had.
Trust me, it's a thing. Like my laptop isn't even that old, and one of the features that I really want out of OBS I can't use until I get a new operating system. And I'm like, I'm not changing my operating system right now.
Sure.
Janking my whole life. Yeah, but if you OBS is good and it's free and it's very robust. It has like a ton of stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I had to update the Zoom software to come here. And I had to
Raquel's using an obsolete Apple.
I'm gonna go.
No longer supported.
I feel like every time I turn on Zoom, it's like every time it's like, oh, we're updating. You don't mind if we update this while you're trying to get into this meeting, right? Right now? Every time.
Well, I must not do it that often because this is the first time that happened to me, but Steve has told me never update anything without my permission, so he had to come here and watch me do it.
Yeah.
He's very paranoid.
Because you click on things all the time. They give you bad software. Badware.
Malware.
Yep. Oh yeah. She's got one of her browsers is infected with something. One of those. Your computer will be shut down in 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds if you don't click on this.
Hey, Billy, as the manager of the stream, I'm going to say, out loud, if anybody's joining us now, we are currently live, and if anybody's joining us, they're lucky enough to catch a little pre-party, and then like at 7, then you kick it off for real.
My alarm is going off that it's time for this party. That's why it's ringing, but I turned it off.
So we are live now. The government is watching us.
Now, one thing, everybody, if you're watching it, don't watch on YouTube and have the audio, because it'll create total insanity of feedback, echo. It'll be like an echo chamber like no other.
Oh yeah.
Like when you have your spouse in another room.
Yes.
And I can hear him twice every time he talks.
Yeah, right.
Looks like Ed is just about here.
Ed is sort of kind of here, and Nicole is sort of kind of here, and it looks like my friend Laura Lowe out in Seattle is there.
Yeah, I had to. That's why that doesn't look like Ed. Okay. She's gone again. Yeah, that's why I shared my screen earlier, because that's what I thought the button was supposed to be, to share my face.
All right.
I hope there was nothing too embarrassing on my screen.
Yeah, because I couldn't get it to work with that plug in. That's with one mic. If I do it as 2, we lose that one. The hearing part of it.
We're having a big thunderstorm here. Can you guys hear? It's very thundery.
Can't hear it.
Oh yeah, I heard it a little
Oh,
bit there.
sure, sure.
Sure is.
Or she might just be playing some thunder sound effects to keep us entertained. Hi, Marigold.
The disco ball.
Oh,
I just made you co-host, Billy. Remember I said I was going to do that before? I forgot, but I just did it now. So you can also admit people if you see them doing.
Oh, good.
Hey, it's 7.
Well, cool. Let's kind of chit chat a little bit, and we'll kind of just slowly get started. Thank you so much, everybody, for showing up and logging on and turning on your computers and everything. We're gonna be live streaming this on YouTube, and then we'll also have a link up on YouTube, so people that aren't here right now, we can always send them the link, and they can watch it later. So I don't know. I kind of sent a few people the Zoom link, and then most people I just sent the YouTube link. But certain people that I know had read the book or that had expressed interest. So I don't know how many people will actually be on the Zoom chat here, but I thought about having like a real structured. I started writing down the things I wanted to talk about, and then I kind of decided I don't want to have a structure. I just want to hang out and chit chat. So anybody that has any input or questions, we can all, talk at our leisure and say hello to one another. So I just kind of want to. I'm really proud of this. I worked really hard on it, and a lot of you really supported me in different ways and helped influence it and inspire it and all that. I just kind of wanted to thank everybody that was in one way or another involved, and just take a moment to be happy about accomplishing a goal. Sometimes I have a lot of goals. I don't always accomplish all of them. So I'm pretty happy that I got this book done. So I'm going to look at my little Zoom screen and introduce everybody here. Perry is the one who runs pyragraph.com, and she's my friend that lives here in Albuquerque, and she always helps me with Zoom stuff and live streaming stuff. She's a musician, and she's awesome. She does all kinds of different online things.
Hey, folks. It's always fun to do stuff with Billy.
Thank you, Perry.
For sure. For sure.
The Quimby's bookstore, we got Liz and Joe Mason there. Liz runs Quimby's, and Liz and Joe were the two inspirations for the two main characters in the book. And they're longtime Chicagoans and zinesters and friends. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for the Perry.
Markel there.
already won the costume contest.
They won the costume contest. It was my friend Laura Lowe that said, "Hey, you should do a costume contest. Everyone should dress up." And then someone else is like, "Yeah, but like if Liz shows up, she'll win." Like that's who is actually the people that we base the drawings on. So Markel is my editor, helped me edit the first round of grammar in this. She was one of the first people to actually see it, besides myself, and she always helps me with my editing on lots of zines and books. So I always appreciate her help.
Thank you.
And then that's her husband, Steve, over there in the red hat, in the same house, but in different rooms. Cynthia there is also from Chicago, and she's the person that we based Hannah Cinnamon. There's Alicia. She's here now.
Woo! Hi, Alicia.
Nicole is
see her
here.
hand,
That's the
but not her
basis for
face.
Nikki Knightley. Nicole lives up in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and runs Las Vegas Zine Fest and does lots of zines and poetry and writing. Jordan and Robert are here in the middle, friends out in California. Oh, Lisa just got here. Hi, Lisa. Lisa is a friend of ours here in Albuquerque.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Ed is Chops, and Anna Jo Beck is Janabo Beck. Jessica Mills from Albuquerque is logging on, and Laura Lowe lives out in Seattle. So this is already more people than I was expecting. So thank you, and here's Alicia.
Hi.
Alicia's here.
Hey, Alicia.
I'm in. I made it.
Hi.
And now you're throwing off the white balance on my
Yeah.
camera.
Is that I'm so pale?
Because you're dark and goth. So Alicia, let's start. You know what? Let's start with Alicia and let's start with the cover.
Yeah.
Because Alicia did the
Nice.
painting, which is now framed.
Oh, nice.
Alicia did the painting that we used for the cover.
It's so amazing.
Thanks.
It's great.
Truly, truly great.
I worked really hard on it, even though I wasn't feeling well.
Oh,
We went through a whole bunch of different sketch designs and ideas, and we kind of settled on this one. And we wanted, I wanted the characters of Joe and Liz to be, Chicago Joe. So we needed, the Indiana Jones looking character with the hat there on the cover. Alicia was the one that came up with the idea for the flashlight, which is such a cool, symbolic detective novel thing, hunting and looking and searching. And then we have like a shadowy figure in the background. And when she first started doing the shadowy figure in the background, it was like holding something. I'm like, what is that person holding? And she's like, oh, that's Chops, like holding the bag. Like Chops always has that messenger bag. I was like, oh, but I don't want you to know who the figure is because it might not be Chops. It could be Nikki Knightley. It could be Henry. It could just be it's just a mysterious person, and it's just kind of like the idea of mystery. Like they're hunting, like they're in a library, but suddenly it's dangerous. You know what I mean? Like,
I love that a library can look dangerous.
yeah. So
Me too.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was really fun working with Billy, actually trying to come up with an idea. We made a bunch of sketches. Like he made some sketches, I made some sketches, and it was really good back and forth that we had. And it was my first time using AI to brainstorm ideas. One of a couple of the other illustrators, was it Patrick?
yeah.
Patrick was using AI, and he was using a more sophisticated AI for his artwork. Like if he wanted to brainstorm an idea, he would put it in his AI program and then draw it out on his own. And he suggested we do that because we had some ideas that we didn't know what it would look like, and we had a bunch of different ideas, and so we wanted to see what would be. And then the other illustrator, Jack, was like, hey, I'm going to use that too. And then that's when I was like, okay, I'll try it. And it was kind of funny because we ended up using what was it, Microsoft Copilot or something, and it was so weird. It was very funny trying to use it because I would type in a thing and I would try to be really specific, and I don't know, I'd come up with some mostly close to what I thought, and I was like, no, except for this, and then it wouldn't do it, and a lot of times it'd come up with a hand with 3 thumbs or something, or I don't know, multiple arms, and I forget what they call that, the technical term for that, but someone told me. But yeah, for this one, I was like, I don't know what it looks like for someone to hold a flashlight, and like we had this idea when they're coming up a stairwell. I was like, what do people look like coming up a stairwell? So I tried to type that in, and it was I wish I could show you all the different fuck ups it had.
Yeah, it was an interesting process. So whenever I was looking for an illustrator, so just to back up a little bit, the way this whole idea came about, Alicia did a crash course on Indiana Jones one week and just watched all the Indiana Jones movies.
Which I have to interrupt there. A lot of them don't hold up.
But there's something really fun about them, and it's an adventure, and I watched some of them with her, and at some point Alicia was like, man, I wish they weren't always going to some other country to steal artifacts from indigenous tribes and stuff. What if they were stealing something out of a museum that was from their culture? And so then we were like, oh, what could they steal? And one of us was like, what if they were trying to find a zine, And then we just started brainstorming this hilarious, stupid idea. And this was in like January, and back in November we had been in Chicago and did a bunch of things. One of the things we did is we had dinner with Joe and Liz, and so we were talking about like, well, instead of Indiana Jones, it's Chicago Jones, and you could do this, and they're like, oh, Chicago Joe, and like,
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone knows Joe Mason as Chicago Joe, but in our minds it's Chicago Joe for sure, because he lives in Chicago, and we know a lot of the Joes that live in other places. But also, he's like Mr. Chicago. He does a zine about Chicago.
Oh my gosh, I feel very honored that we kind of had an interview in behind the zines. I had an interview with Joe behind the zines, and it was really fun talking to him. I really, really loved his zines. And when I met him for the first time in Chicago, what was that, last year? I was like, this man is just Chicago.
He's all Chicago all the time, baby.
First person that ever offered us Malort, and we're still friends. I mean, we're still friends.
Right.
That's
If anyone's ever had Malort, it's awful. But I guess it's a Chicago rite of passage. So that's how. And so from there, I just started coming up with a plot and writing things, and then started just basing the characters on different people that I know, and just went from there. And it's funny whenever at some point Liz was talking about the book, she's like, oh, the Quimby's fanfic is out, and I was like a little bit offended, and then I was like, oh, that's totally what it is, though, because the whole book is like, half of it's like real zine history and half of it's just total BS. But Quimby's, as an institution, just had such a profound effect on my life when I moved to Chicago, and I was like, oh, it's Chicago Joe is the name of the thing. Like, of course, there's gonna be like half the book's gonna take place at Quimby's. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember I moved to Chicago in 1999, and I still remember the first time that I went into Quimby's. I was 18 years old. And I had come from Las Vegas, Nevada, which had no place like Quimby's whatsoever at that time. Probably something close to it now, but not back then. And when I walked in, I was like, what is? I didn't understand it at all. But now I can't imagine. I can't imagine Chicago without it.
Yeah.
At all.
And to me,
it's like normal.
And for me, I came from small town Iowa, and when I went to Quimby's, I was like, oh, this is just how it is in the city. Like, there's a store that has zines, and then you go to lots of cities, and some cities have that, but most cities don't have that, and you realize like Quimby's is like a really special place. So
yeah, I was like, oh, you could be whatever you want, and they have something for you there. You know, it's for all you weirdos, and I felt really comfortable in there. So
Liz, let me hear you talk a little bit. What did you think? I don't think I asked any really people's permission. Hey, can I put you in my book? I think I sent you the manuscript. I'm like, hey, here's a rough draft, and you're basically one of the main characters.
I thought it was awesome. I was super flattered. Also, to me, okay, I know you said that you like spent a lot of time on it and everything, but like it feels to me like you were like, I did this amazing thing, here it is, because I never see it behind the scenes. So to me, it was just like you made it seem so like you had this like sense of like sprezzatura about it. You were like, hey, I wrote a novel, I put you in it, here it is. Like you were so like I had no, like, also you kept it under wraps, like, for a long ass time.
Like, because he was, you were just like, I just want to get it done. He was a little bit nervous about it.
Well, I was in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, anybody that's like, don't put me in your book. Like, I can change it enough that I can make it. But I'm like, my mindset was like, I'm going to start with like a foundation of like, this is basically who the character is. This is basically who the character is. So.
I mean, to me, it felt like I immediately, okay. So you remember that comic series, Henry and Glenn?
Yeah.
Okay. So the blurb on the back from Henry Rollins says, like, this is hilarious. Have you showed it to Glenn?
Yeah.
Like, and that's kind of how I felt about it. I was like, this is hilarious, but have you showed this to Steven, the founder of Quimby's?
So Steve's definitely one of the characters, and you know, there's a drawing. Eventually, we did an illustration with him, and he was one he wasn't really a main central character, so he would have been really easy to change. And his reaction, he thought it was really great. And when I gave him the rough draft, at some point in there, because I kind of wrote the plot, and there's certain things that are just giant plot holes. I'm like, how do I cover this up? Oh, well, you know, Steve did a bunch of drugs back in the day. Like, that's how I covered up a bunch of my plot holes. I'm like, well, why would a store owner do this? Well, it was the 90s. He was doing drugs. And so I remember when he sent me back, after he had read, he gave me his
review.
And at some point I referred to the character of Steve as some hippie stoner dude. And he was like, his only gripe at all, he's like, can you please change hippie stoner dude to punk rock stoner dude? Because I don't really like hippies. So he was offended that I called him a hippie. So that was the only correction I had to make for Steve, which was really convenient for me.
I have a question. So where'd you come up with Burf? Was it Burf?
Liz could maybe answer this better. Because the character of Steve in the book is called Burf.
Because that was so Quimby's was named after the magazine that he used to publish, Quimby magazine. And he had this character, Burf Quimby, that was supposed to be the editor. And so, but it was clearly a stand-in for him, And so there's in the sort of legacy of Quimby's, there's Burf Quimby, and often we'll allude to that, if we post something, that's where we don't want to say we don't want to put a name on it, who said what or whatever. We'll allude to Burf Quimby back in the day, blah blah blah.
Spirit of the store.
Spirit of the store. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Do you know where did the name Quimby come from?
Well, okay, so a lot of people think that it's named after Chris Ware's Quimby the Mouse, but that's actually just serendipitous. He had Quimby the Mouse at the same time that, he lived in Wicker Park, he was walking down the street, and Quimby's open, and he was like, wait, this is weird. This is a store that sells exactly things that I want, and I have a character named. But while that is true, the store is actually, the name of it has more to do with the magazine, but I don't know exactly, I think Quimby, so there's the flight Quimby,
I have no idea.
Whatever.
Mayor Quimby of Simpsons.
I want to say Ramona Quimby, no, that was not Beverly Clear.
I forgot that was her last name.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because people make that joke a lot. Yeah. But Harriet Quimby? No, the one who was and I remember, I know Stephen has alluded to his respect for her, but I don't actually, I feel like he would have a better, and also the horrible part about this is that he has probably told me. Harriet Quimby. There we go. He has probably told me, and I filed it away somewhere in my long time.
Well, and I know all of this isn't, because he put out a big zine that was the history of Quimby's, and there's a couple different zines about Quimby's, but I just the Burf Quimby, it's not him, but it is him, and so I was like, okay, instead of calling this character Steve, I'm just gonna name it Burf Quimby. And
well, yes, and what I noticed about the illustration of him is it looks like a cross between him and the current owner of Quimby's, Eric Kersimer, and a little bit of Chris Ware.
All one bald Chicago.
All one bald Chicagoan, yeah, no. But yeah, there it is. Yeah. And I showed it to Eric, but I just called him, his last name's Kersimer, I just called him Kersimer. I was like, so here's this book, blah, blah, blah. I'm curious about your thoughts on this, because I feel like this looks like a cross, this is clearly supposed to be Stephen, but it kind of looks more like you. And he's like, well, actually, I think it looks like Chris.
I have no idea what Chris looks like, but and the person that drew this, we gave him 2 or 3 pictures of Stephen.
Yeah.
But I also thought, oh, it does look kind of like Eric. Yeah, I had the same thought, so that's kind of funny.
Yeah. I will also say, I don't know if this was in the original draft, or maybe I only caught it when I like read it once it came out as like the book, because I was one of your beta readers when you gave it to me, you know. And my very first impression is like the audience's first impression of the character that is, you know, Elizabeth. And it was like, wow, she's kind of a hard ass. And I was like, is that how I come across? And I talked to a number of people, they were like, yes. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, that's fair.
I totally don't think you come off as a hard ass in real life. I definitely wanted just like a really stereotypical, like, she's tough in the beginning chapters, then she literally lets down her hair and gets like all into it, and like, but I wanted her a little bit, you know, a little bit stiff and like,
She's
who's
like
this guy?
librarian.
Yeah, I wanted you to be like kind of like a tough librarian, and then Chicago Joe's kind of the wild man that comes in and I don't know who you think you are, you know, and then he like wins her over, you know, just like really stereotypical Pulp Fiction stuff, you know.
I mean, Joe, would you do that for Liz?
That's exactly how we met. Nailed.
In a library, sure.
One of the things that was kind of tricky, Cynthia is here, and so Cynthia Hannafin is Hannah Cinnamon. So the name, I just flipped the letters around. I'm like, oh, Hannah Cinnamon, that would be like kind of a fun name. And I kind of wanted a couple different, you know, female, like kind of strong females. And it was a little bit tricky to have them be similar but different. And so sometimes one seems kind of more of a hard ass than the other, and you know what I mean? But I wanted I wanted the idea that there's like these two strong women that are like running the Chicago zine scene a little bit, you know.
Cynthia's very mysterious to me. I like that she's got this.
Cynthia or Hannah?
Oh, I'm sorry. I do that all the time. And Nicole, sorry. After I read the book, I loved and called Nicole Nikki, and she just about was like, "What did you call me?" So sorry. That's
then you started doing it on purpose.
Yeah. After that, I was like, I'm just gonna start calling her Nikki. But now I know I'm like, no, she's Nicole. She's a totally different person. But I have to. Yeah. Now I'm getting better at separating people. That's the hard part about, you know, writing about people that you know of.
Like on the topic of names, so Nicole, her zine name is Nicole Morning, and she lives here in Las Vegas, New Mexico. And so real quick, just how I got Nicole involved in this. I sent out a text like, hey, I need a villain in my zine story. And she was like one of the first ones to reply. And she was like, I'll always be the villain in a man's story. And I thought it was like such a good line.
Oh, so good.
So I'm like, okay. And I just need someone to base it on, right? And so I'm like, oh, I'm gonna base this character on her, and so we'll make the character live in New Mexico. And so I'm like, oh, instead of Nicole Morning, it'll be Nikki Knightley, and it sounds like a little bit dangerous. And then when I told her, she's like, oh my god, no one calls me Nikki, I hate the name. And then like for the next like month, same thing, like I kept in my mind, I kept calling Cynthia Hannah, and I kept calling Nicole. The only one that it works is Ed, who lives out in New Jersey and does the word distribution. His real life nickname is Chops, and so in my phone his name is Chops. And so for him it's easy because I'm just like, oh, it's just Chops. And when I hang out, sometimes I call him Chops. But then I made up a total bullshit backstory of why he has the name Chops. And all the other people I don't explain at all. And Anna Jobeck is in here too, and so for her I just changed to Jana Bobeck because I just think that sounded really funny. So I'm like, oh, Jana Bobeck. So
well, Cynthia's character Hannah, I feel like is very mysterious, and I love that she's got a cat in her bag, and she just seems to have the inside knowledge. I think she just seems very wise when it comes to underground culture and zine culture, and it's just very cool. She's just very cool. Like, she'll never freak out about anything. She'll just take it, you know, smooth as ice, you know, like, sure, I know what's going on. Like, she's not intimidated by Chicago Joe at all. She's like, I know who you are.
Yeah.
But sure. I like that.
Cynthia, what did you think when you first heard of it or saw it?
Well, that was one of the things that surprised me is when you first messaged me about the book. Well, first of all, I was shocked and really delighted that I would be a character in your book. I'm from Chicago, but I lived away from Chicago for about a decade as Chicago Zine Fest was getting started. And people like Liz and Billy and Anna were heroes of mine. So moving to Chicago and getting to know them has been really thrilling for me. And then finding out I was a character in your book was just amazing, Billy. But you mentioned that Hannah Cinnamon, which I do love that play on the initials, was mysterious. And I think of myself as sort of the opposite of mysterious. But I do think, as I read through the book, the place I'm most comfortable in the zine community is behind the scenes. And I think you really captured that with Hannah's character, that she's sort of someone who is supporting others in the zine community. And I loved that that felt very true to who I am in the real world. But I have to tell you, the thing that made me the happiest was that Hannah carries a cat. Some of you know about and have met my zine cat, Tigra, who was with me for 22 and a half years. And you sent me your manuscript not long after I lost her. And weirdly, you named the cat in the book Pulaski, and that would have been Tigra's name if a friend of mine hadn't named her Tigra. So Billy sent this manuscript and said, I can change anything about your character that you want. Whatever Billy wanted to do with my character was great. I did have one request, though. In the book, the cat was a gray tabby, and my Tigra was a brown tabby. So I did ask Billy to change the cat to a brown tabby so that Tigra's spirit could sort of live on in the book. But I just thought it was, like as Liz mentioned, it definitely has sort of a pulpy fanfic sort of vibe, but really it feels like a love letter to the Chicago zine scene, to Quimby's, and to kind of all of us around the country and around the world that think of Quimby's as I believe Mike McPadden once put it, our bastion of freakdom, sort of our mothership for the things we're into and the community we've built. And it just felt like a really beautiful tribute to me, Billy. So thank you so much for doing this.
You're very, very welcome. You're a really important part of the zine community in Chicago, but also just, globally. It's one giant global zine community, But it wasn't an accident that I named the cat Pulaski because you have Pulaski connections and you had a zine about Pulaski, and Pulaski is a street in a neighborhood in Chicago, so I kind of want to I'm just like, I feel like this character would name her cat something after Chicago, and it's just another like throwback to Chicago, but I didn't know all that other stuff about your cat. So that's really cool.
As always with me, it's all about the cat, for sure.
I love that story. I don't know if it's okay if I say something to comment on that. I said before I came to Chicago in 1999, I was a young person and I had known about zines prior to coming to Chicago, but it really was Chicago that helped me know more about zines, and zines kind of opened up the world to me. And of course, then I was working at Uncle Fun and I met Billy, and it was just like, what? He really opened up the world of zines. I was like, yeah, I know what a zine is, but I have to say that Chicago really, I was a young adult and I kind of grew up around that scene, and Quimby's was a huge part of that, even though I wasn't, I was kind of like you, Hannah, I kind of feel really quiet and stuff, but, I read all the things, and I remember being so excited when the first Chicago Zine Fest was started, and it blew my mind. It was great. I was so excited that there was a Zine Fest in Chicago, and now it's one of the biggest ones in the world, probably.
Yeah.
So I owe it. I owe it to Chicago.
I know I'm biased, but I do think that Chicago is sort of the epicenter of American zine culture right now. There's just so much going on, and spreads out all over the entire country. So, and we love it when our zine friends from elsewhere come to visit. I'm looking at you two. I'm looking at Jordan and Robert. And if you haven't been to Chicago yet, come visit us and come to Quimby's and come to Zine Club Chicago.
Let's talk about Jana Bobeck a little bit. So Chicago Joe has been out of Chicago, and then he comes back to Chicago, and he's got all this like go get 'em energy. And the Hannah character and the Elizabeth character, they've been in Chicago, and they're just kind of like the researchers and the librarians, and they're kind of just like got this, like Alicia said, like calm, cool. And I wanted another character that kind of could like match Joe's energy a little bit. And Anna also is like a pillar of the zine community and a pillar of the Chicago zine scene, and always doing stuff and always promoting zines. And I just thought, oh, she'd be such a good character. And obviously none of the characters are exact, but it's like that's in my mind when I'm writing the dialogue. And then you just kind of like turn up the volume one way or the other, you know, to make it fit the scene. But I'm like, I kind of want a character that's like young and fresh and hip and on the cutting edge, and like, oh, I've heard of this new zine, it just got printed yesterday, and always like got the latest thing. And some of her lines were like really fun to write, and but also cool and collected in her own way too, like always is kind of a step ahead of everyone, you know. So
It's so fashionable.
yeah. And it was funny because whenever I came up with the Jana Bobeck name first, and then when I was like, oh, I need like another character, and then I started thinking of Cynthia, I'm like, oh, I'll name her Hannah. I'm like, oh, Hannah and Jana, that's like too much. I'm like, no, just like say it in the book. So I'm like, in the book, I'm like, yeah, Hannah and Jana, we're best friends, we do it all, Hannah and Jana, you know. And I'm like, okay, I think it'll be fine. You know, sometimes in real life names rhyme, it's okay. So
I liked it. Yeah.
But yeah, Anna, do you have any thoughts on everything? Is it okay that I put you in a book?
It's totally cool that you put me in the book. I think it's so fun. I mean, it's not like I'm the only one. It's nice that you did everybody. Get them all out of the way at once. Write the book with all your friends in it, and then nobody has to feel weird about it. I think you did it right.
Good, thank you.
Originally, Billy had asked me to do the illustrations for it, and I didn't obviously do them because I was immediately overwhelmed. But I have to say that when I first started thinking about illustrating, the first one he had me do was one of Jana Bobeck, and I will admit, Anna, that you were really fun to draw. Like as a caricature, you know. I was like, oh yeah, that's all I want to do is draw Jana Bobeck.
She spent about 2 weeks drawing different pictures of you.
I was like, oh what about this outfit? You're in like different outfits.
Different outfits, different hair, got a nose ring, that's fun. Glasses.
And then I was like, oh wait, I can't handle everybody else. No, I can't do it. You should find someone else to draw all these pictures.
Yeah.
So kind of the so Chicago Joe and Elizabeth and Hannah and Jana were kind of like the good characters, the protagonists. And then I'm like, okay, I need something to balance it. And so then I started coming up with the Nikki Knightley character and the Chops character. And then the main villain is Henry. And Henry is kind of loosely based on Patrick, who did some of the illustrations in the book. And he's an old Chicago friend of mine that lives in Michigan now. And nothing really is too specifically about him, but the Henry character is pretty much bad the whole time. The Chops character is bad for like, is not really exactly a villain, but definitely like competition for Chicago Joe, because if it's just like a bunch of zinesters trying to find a zine, like, oh, we'll just all work together. I'm like, yeah, you got to have some conflict. So I'm like, okay, we need someone that for some reason is trying to get the zine before Chicago Joe. And now it's a race, and now we're trying to one up each other, and you know, now it's a battle and it's a fight. And then eventually the Chops character kind of like comes over to the good side. And then the Nikki Knightley character kind of is not really a villain, but it's hard because I don't want a zinester to ever be a villain, and I definitely wanted her to be a zinester, and she has her own reasons. But I kind of painted her as a little bit in a desperate situation, like she has to get this zine to survive, you know what I mean? Which is ridiculous, I know. That's what makes it fun. But the Nikki Knightley dialogue was some of the really, really, really fun dialogue, because she's just kind of like a bad, she's naughty, she's the one having sex, she's the one staying out late, she does this, whatever she wants to do, and Nicole in real life is like so nice. So, so a lot of all of that is like fabricated, but Nicole also does have like, you know, a naughty streak and a badass streak, but a lot of the details of like, okay, well, the character will be from New Mexico now, and the character will, you know, do this and do that. And one funny thing is, I'd already written like a couple drafts of it, and then I was hanging out with Nicole. She came down to Albuquerque or something, and we were hanging out, and I saw her like smoking, and I was like, oh, of course, like Nikki Knightley smokes. Like I gotta go back. And so then I went back and added all these little spots, like, you know, 1950s, like, oh, she's just on the corner smoking, like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Just, you know, so symbolic of being like a bad character. So.
Well, I thought that you kind of nailed it in the book, because you've got Chops, who's the nemesis, and Nikki, who's the femme fatale.
Right.
She's totally
Well, and that's what made this book, parts of it felt like hard-boiled to me.
Oh, yeah.
And I sort of loved that.
It was a great detective. Like, it really works with those detective novel tropes.
I think Nikki really brings both sides together. I feel like she's kind of the glue a little bit of the book, in a sense. Maybe not totally. Maybe I'm just making shit up, but a little bit, because I forget what part it is in the book, Billy, but there's one point where you really, as the reader, I really sympathized for her, and I was like, but I was kind of rooting for her in a small little devil's advocate way, you know, because I loved all the things she said. Like, she's such a great kind of villain, but at the end, like, you don't want her to, you know, to go to jail or whatever that happens, or, you know, because
right.
You're like, I've been there, you know, we've all been a struggling artist at one point, and we kind of get it, you know, we all have bills we have to pay, and we're all like trying to pay the rent, and you like, I sympathize with her a little bit. And plus, she says my favorite line in the entire book. Look out, he knows karate. It's like my favorite part. Like, I just love that whole scene at the end where, you know, Henry's there, and I can just imagine Chops going like this, and she's like, look out, he knows karate.
The Nikki character had some of the best dialogue, and
Really did.
it's funny when I read different books, like a lot of times the chapter about the villain is like the most fun to read, because it's the most dangerous, and you don't know what's going to happen, and it's weird how sometimes you even if you're not rooting for the villain, you're still the most excited to read those chapters, you know.
Yeah. And I feel like, I don't know, I know Nikki Knightley is not Nicole, but I don't know, Nicole's a babe. It's so sticky, you know? Like, the illustrations of Nikki are, I think, are you're just like, oh, wow, she's cool. I don't know. Makes me want to smoke a cigarette.
Right. Ed is on here too. Ed, I don't know if you're just listening in, if you're able to chit chat, but Ed is the Chops character who is kind of a villain, and then kind of turns into you know, an ally towards the end. And I definitely wanted Ed and the Chops character and the Nikki character to team up, you know, because on the other side we have, obviously, you know, Hannah and Jana and Elizabeth. They're all like teammates. Chicago Joe comes in and kind of like works his way in so that he, you know, they're all on that team. So we needed a team on the other side. So the Chops and the Nikki character kind of team up. And now Patrick just logged into Zoom.
I'm glad that y'all are happy with your characters, because Billy paints me to be some know nothing about zines, getting played by Nikki Knightley character. Thank you, Billy. I appreciate that.
Oh no, you
right?
you're basically the man babe in this story. You get laid. You get all the ladies.
I got to get into a tussle with Chicago Joe. You make me get into a fight with a legend over there, right? Chicago Joe gets 4 stars, right?
But, you
I'm
know,
fighting
I
with
don't
this
know
dude
if
on
Joe-
Milwaukee Ave and stuff, right? Like, jeez, man.
I don't know if Joe in real life is hot tempered, but I felt like when I was reading that, I was like, what is Joe doing? Why is he chasing after Chops? What did he even do? Like, chill out. But then Billy was like, you go ahead. Why did you write that?
No, because you got to have some confrontation so whenever I give everyone rough drafts and I'm like, what would you want me to change? And Ed was like, dude, like, how come my character has never even heard of a zine? Like, you make me seem like if people find out this is based on me, they think I'm a total punk. Like, I never even heard of zines. But like,
I don't think I asked you to change a single thing, though, did I? I don't think so.
You should comment
no, you
on the
complained
YouTube
about it,
stream.
but you didn't ask me to change it.
Make a snarky comment.
Classic. I
No,
love it.
not snarky. Make a normal comment.
No, because in the original draft, like I had him like as a zine star, and then I'm like, no, there's got to be like him and Chicago Joe got to be like fighting about something. It's like, okay, this guy knows everything about zines. This guy doesn't know anything about zines. The whole book is about zines. So it'll be something that they can fight over. But I told Ed, I'm like, yeah, but like at the end, the Chops character comes around, and then the Chops character uses karate to like save the day.
My favorite line.
Right. Yeah. I definitely has some redeeming qualities toward the end of it, but I do love that you worked in the pencil aspect, which is just so wild. I remember you sending me all these like text messages, like these pencil questions. I'm like, the hell is Billy getting at, right? Like,
for a couple weeks before, like, I even told Ed about the book, I was like, because I'm like, oh yeah, like I need to work in this pencil angle. I think that'll be really good, because it's just shocking to me how many zines there are about pencils, and that, like, if not for Ed, I wouldn't know that there's a pencil scene and that people talk about pencils the same way I talk about zines. Like, there's podcasts and there's experts on pencils that collect pencils, and so it just all worked out to be like really good for the story. But then I was like, okay, I was like trying to write the Chops dialogue about pencils. I'm like, I don't know dick about pencils, like this is not gonna work. So I'm like, hey Chops, like what's a really good like old pencil that's hard to find? And so he would like send me a list of 3 or 4 pencils. I'm like, hey, what's a really good pencil, like an everyday use that you'd use for a crossword puzzle? And the whole pencil angle worked really good then with the Hannah character, because I'm like, oh, that's like something like I'll have like one other character and we'll make it Hannah, and then they can connect and they can maybe have a little romantic fling, and it'll start because they connect on pencils. So it's like super dorky, but I think it's really fun.
It's cute.
It was a really fun read, and like joking aside, man, I do really appreciate, like what Cynthia said, like I get to hang out in the book with a bunch of legends, right? Like that's cool, man. Like I've always been a character, but now it's like official, right? Like here I am, right? You can read all about me, right? So like, yeah, man, I do. It's really cool that you allowed me to be like part of that book or whatever. So yeah, thank you for that, and it is a really fun read. And by the way, Steven from Quimby's absolutely loves it, man, because I was next to him at Pete's Mini Zine Fest, and he brought it up to like every customer who came by, right?
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh my God, because I was sitting next to him too. He's like, oh, I'm this character in this book, and this guy's a character in the book too, and he pointed to me, and like, yeah, man, he's super hyped on it. So
oh, wow.
Yeah, man, I can tell you that. I can tell you that from firsthand experience. So yeah, man.
That's all really, really good to hear. It's funny because when someone like asked me like, how'd you come up with this and how'd you come up with that, and it all happened so fast that I don't know how I came up with it, but that's just the creative process. Like, where do ideas come from? They just appear, right? But like, I sort of had like, okay, well, I'm gonna do this thing in Chicago, and we'll do this thing here, and we'll connect it to San Francisco, and Ed's in New Jersey. Okay, so and you sort of have all these like pinpoints, and it's like the conspiracy map where you're connecting the yarn. And so I had all the points, and then the yarn is just the total bullshit fabrication of like, okay, well, here's why Chicago is connected to New Jersey, and here's why it's connected to San Francisco, you know, and that's when the fun creative part is, where you just like make up nonsense reasons.
Well, to go back a little bit to Billy's process, and even Ed saying, you know, why is he texting me? I think you kept it pretty close to the chest while you were writing it, but you wrote it so fast. There were some times, this is a little inside scoop being married to Billy. There were sometimes, like, I swear, like, he wasn't eating. He'd come home from work and just, I gotta get this down, you know, and he wrote it so fast and he wasn't doing anything else. And I think for 2 weeks you had like dark circles under your eyes. You just look like total shit. You're like, no, but I have this energy. And he's like, I know I'm gonna crash, but I gotta get it out. And I wonder if anyone else has like had that, you know, feeling where you're just like, you just gotta get it out of yourself. And that's how Chicago Joe came out, and that's why he's really grateful to Markel for, because he wrote it so fast, and then there was a lot of mistakes, obviously, but
yeah, Markel did my first round of editing because she's really good with grammar and sentence structure, and she catches all the simple mistakes, but also the more complicated. And thank you, Markel, for always editing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It took you longer than 2 weeks, but I think it took about six weeks.
Like the rough draft was like a month and a half, and then it was editing all summer. So definitely I did more. Yeah, which is how you should. It's interesting with this. I'm glad Lisa Barrow is here. Lisa's a writing friend of mine that lives here in Albuquerque. And one time we were talking about writing, and we used to be in a writing group together like 10 years ago. And we would meet once a week and talk about writing and stuff. And one time we were talking, she's like, "Oh, you're a pantser." I'm like, I'm a pantser? What does that mean? She's like, "Well, there's two different kind of ways that people write. Some people make like, you know, line by line, like chapter 1 is this, chapter 2 is this, and they map out the whole story. And some people just sit down by the seat of their pants and start writing. And you're like a seat of the pants kind of person. And like almost all of my writing has always been exactly like that, where I just sit down and like, chapter 1, this happens, chapter 2, this, and I'll write out, you know, beginning to end. And this one, I totally mapped out every single chapter, which I'd never really done it that way. And it's such a better way to write, because especially if you're doing something like this, where you're trying to plant seeds of like this thing that's going to happen in chapter 13, like we're going to reference it in chapter 8 or whatever. And I spent maybe like 2 weeks maybe coming up with the characters, and then another week or two mapping out what every chapter was going to be before I actually did any writing. And like writing dialogue and stuff, like that's the most fun part. So mapping out the chapters really felt like work, but it gave me like it gave me a map of like where to follow. I'm like, okay, what's chapter 3? Oh yeah, chapter 3 will be this. And it was it is different than how I usually write, but it was really great.
You were so immersed. Do you remember, Billy, when you started writing it, you missed a lunch with me, and then the next time I saw you, you were like, "I started a novel. I'm so sorry, but I was writing my novel."
That was it, Lisa. Yes, he lost. You weren't the only one, Lisa.
Did it, man.
There are so many people who are like, "Where are you, Billy?"
I was in the zone. Yeah, I forgot about that, and thank you for reminding me that I skipped the lunch with you. But I remember I had it like written down, and I was writing, and I'm like, oh shit, it's 3:00. I missed lunch.
I mean, if he wasn't going to get fired, he probably would have not gone to work. There were a few times he's like, oh, why do I have to go to work?
So that I could eventually pay to print the book.
I didn't mean it as a criticism, just as a testament to your like total devotion
to
this amazing idea that you got, and you really followed through. I haven't finished it yet, but it's great.
Thank you.
Well, Lisa, we also have to thank you because of that, we now have a calendar where it's like in the middle of our dining room, where we're like, okay, we're seeing this person on this day, and we're doing this, and it's like right in front of our face.
I missed like 4 things, like in like a week or two, that like things that I wanted to do, like lunch with you and lunch with whoever, and so we went and bought like one of those like business office gigantic white calendars, and we write down like lunch with whoever, going to a show, tickets for the thing, and yeah, it's been really helpful.
I know everyone else has a smartphone and are more sophisticated and efficient that way, but we have a gigantic paper calendar in our dining room.
Hey, I want to mention real quick because Patrick's here now. So Patrick is a friend of mine that I used to know back in Chicago. We used to do a bunch of art together, and he lives in Michigan now. And whenever I sent out the text about who wants to be a villain in my story, like Nicole answered right away, and Patrick also answered right away. And I ended up not needing the I used the Nikki character a lot more than the Henry, but I'm like, I need some sort of person behind the scenes that's like the money, that's like this evil villain that's going to stay evil the whole time. And so that was the Henry character. And so then all the little details that I needed, I based that on Patrick. So Patrick lives in Michigan now and all this stuff. But then obviously almost all of it is like made up nonsense. But there is one thing that I mentioned in the book, something about like, yeah, he started drawing these Garfield comics and he made all this money and got rich. And Patrick actually has done Garfield comics, which are really, really great.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, we have them somewhere. But then Patrick also is a really great mural artist and artist in general. And he was one of the first people I contacted about doing the illustrations. And he ended up doing about half the illustrations. And our other friend, Jack, who we also used to know back in Chicago, Jack did the other half of the illustrations. But Patrick, you were really, really great to work with. And I love the drawings. And it adds so much to the book. So thank you.
It's cool to get to see all the faces that were drawn pretty much on this meeting tonight. So a lot of people I haven't, met in real life, but it's good to put a face to the sketch. And you know what? I jumped on being the villain. I haven't been able to be one. So it was when Billy sent out the list of characters, I was like, make me the villain. I'll do it. And you guys mentioned the pencil. That was one of my favorite personal illustrations, was the arm with the pencil sketch. I really was one of my favorites to create. So this was really cool. Billy, like Billy said, we all, Jack and myself and Billy all know each other from street art days back in the middle aughts or so, back in Chicago. And so this was kind of a reunion of sorts for us. We always used to do art parties and work on collaborative items, with for street art and graffiti, and just to do this in a different stage of our lives creatively was a really fun venture. And I feel it's always been fun to be a part of Billy's projects. I've been able to illustrate a couple of his casino items here and there for some comics, and yeah, it was a good time. Really enjoyed it.
I was so excited when Billy said that you were going to be the illustrator or one of the illustrators for the book, because he had asked me and I was completely overwhelmed and I was going through this weird, difficult time in my life. And I was so excited because I love your artwork so much. When we visited you, it's like a few years ago now, and we saw that you were all your paintings. I was totally floored. And I mean, I was a fan of your artwork back in the Chicago days that we were talking about, and I loved all your street art, and your stickers were so great. We still have some of your other old artwork. It's probably worth thousands now, I'm sure.
Okay, well, I mean,
yeah, and
probably
I
not.
I didn't even know who you were. I remember going to this art gallery in Chicago at one point, and I think I went because of you. You're like, hey, come check out this thing, and I bought like a couple of small pieces, and it was. I'm really excited that you did the artwork for his book. Your drawings are amazing, and you're a professional, and you got it done so quickly. It would have taken me like 10 years. So it's really cool, and actually, I think you and Jack's work really went well together, and even though they were totally different styles, but it really melded, and it's amazing how, because I remember Billy saying, he's like, how is it going to be weird that they're two different artists? And I was like, no, I think it's going to be fine. And it's amazing how well they did go together.
I think that's part of the challenge, that's at least part of the challenge that I really enjoy, is to take, if you're collaborating with someone, and we did lay it on the table. Like Jack was like, I'd really like to see certain elements of this have more of a graphite appeal or this type of pencil, etc. And I was like, all right, let's try it. So we threw some stuff down digitally to match kind of each other's work, and then, you know, laid the ground rules, and then it flew from there. And I mean, I think part of the fun of creation, especially collaboration and creation, is to meet the moment. And I feel like both of us working in illustrations were able to do that and share some of the responsibilities and toss, you know, some sketches back and forth. We're like, hey, I think you're better at this, or I think your style would look better this way. So like, why don't we collaborate on this? It was a cool process. And you're right, we did, you know, we stuck to the deadline. I think we rocked out on that. And I think that helped kind of push everything to where it needed to be when Billy wanted to put it into production.
I mean, you two are pros. It's amazing. Like, we're so proud of both of you, because I mean, you've known each other for so long, and it's amazing how far you've come, and you're just pros and really, really talented. And it's amazing that, I mean, that's one of my favorite things is interdisciplinaries and collaboration. And then it's just really cool the way it worked and came together. And it's because of your professionalism and talent.
Yeah, like I know a ton of people that are artists, but you and Jack are both, not only are you artists, but you're, like she said, professional artists, you know, because you set like a time frame, like, oh, and you're really patient with me, because I'm not easy to work with sometimes, but you were very much like, okay, well, I need this description by this time because I'm going to work on it this day. And you're really good at having a schedule, and like, oh, well, because this was just like some side thing that you're doing. You have all these other projects and murals that you're going around, and also Jack, you know, flies around the country painting murals. So the two of you were really patient with me and helpful, and it was really fun to watch how the two of you worked together. And I was worried that it would be weird to have two different styles, and you were the one that told me, like, oh, I remember, like, Choose Your Own Adventure books, they'd always have like two or three different artists, and I really liked having different styles, and it keeps it, you know, kind of mixed up. And you know, it's okay to do that, you know, and there's no rules, we can do whatever we want, you know.
I really liked
part of that.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I think part of that is, you know, sure, we are friends, we have done a lot of collaborations in our past, but I mean, I look at, regardless of what I'm working on, you know, I treat a project as I treat a client, right? Like, there's give and take, there's back and forth. There's always going to be things that need to be corrected or changed or updated. I really don't look at no as a possibility. So, you know, I think that's kind of my mindset. And I think that helps move the flow along.
I really liked that one of your favorite illustrations was of the pencil tattoo, because that one's pretty epic. I like that as well. But I also, I don't know, I always like the female characters too, and Nikki Knightley is a very strong, I mean, all the females characters in this book are very strong characters, but I thought it was amazing how both you and Jack depicted Nikki Knightley, and I just loved both of your interpretations of her. And I was like, wow, like the one that Jack did where she's like kind of just standing there and she's smoking a cigarette and she's got her glasses on. I was like, wow, she looks so cool and tough. And then the fight scene between Liz and Nikki was
the fight scene was a good time.
You got the movement in there so good. I was like, look at all that. It's an action illustration, and I absolutely think it's so cool.
Well, and again, I think this is where pulling in, I think, some of Jack's style or an element of his style or attempting it really helped out the book, because, or as far as the illustrations go, because there was a lot of things I did strictly with, I think, 3 digital pencils and some erasers that kind of imitated some smudging. And like with the lighting and stuff in that image, I think it's a lot of fun. That was a really fun illustration.
I don't know. What are some other illustrations that other people liked? Did anyone have a favorite illustration? I loved all of them. I don't know. Sometimes I just want to look at the pictures. I do that a lot with all kinds of books.
Well, I love the illustration with the iconic Quimby sign. I know when Liz was posting about this, she put it up, and I feel like, you know, the illustrations really wouldn't have been complete without capturing Quimby's in that way, because Quimby's is so much a character in the book itself. Liz and I joke a lot about Quimby's being an entity. I call Quimby's my bookstore boyfriend, for example. And it's just so palpable to me that Quimby's was a character in the book. So I did love that the illustration captured that.
I'm not doing it. I tried to. I had a picture where I stood outside and took a picture of the picture from the book that it was depicting in front of the Quimby sign, and I was like, "This is iconic. We need to like have this as a print or something. It's beautiful."
It's really good. Jack has done a bunch of signs. I remember we visited him in Colorado, and he had a whole portfolio of signs of old signs he'd seen in Denver, and he's super talented. I wish he was here. I wish he could talk about him. He's really good.
Yeah, he did the Gino's East, which is a real pizza place in Chicago. Yeah, like Patrick definitely was kind of like doing these types, and then Jack would do these types, and Jack does a lot of like I don't know, like stationary objects, like old cars and old hotel fronts and old signs, and he already does that just for fun. So for him to do like the Quimby's, like I didn't tell him to do the Quimby sign. He would like, we were just kind of brainstorming, and then one day he just like emailed me the drawing of the Quimby sign. I was like, oh yeah, this is great, you know. And it was cool too, for going back to the fight scene that Patrick did. I think the first version, they were just kind of like on a sidewalk. I'm like, yeah, but they're fighting like right outside of Quimby's, and so then he went and added the Quimby's sign and stuff too.
It's really cool. Yeah, I love the drawings. I forgot what I was going to say. Let me see. It's really good.
I do want to give a shout out to you for the cover, because you did capture, I think, that 80s like detective vibe of I just feel like going to the library and picking up a Nancy Drew novel, you know, and I feel like you really captured it.
Oh, thank you very much. Again, I think you weren't here when I was talking about it earlier, but Billy and I did a lot of brainstorming, and you're talking about going to the library. We actually went to the library, and Billy, I was like, well, what style do you want? And he had pulled out all these old books. He's like, kind of like this, but he also pulled out a couple of new modern kids books and young adult books and stuff. So it actually really helped me that you did that, because I had no idea where to start or what you were thinking of. So and I don't know if anyone remembers these from Uncle Fun, but Ted had gone shopping once, and he had went down to Mexico, and he bought a whole bunch of original Mexican pulp art fiction covers,
like just the bear paintings.
Yeah, and I was like kind of getting my inspiration from that, but also kind of the old Hardy Boys, like way back
when we were in the library. I just pulled like every Hardy Boys, every Nancy Drew, every Babysitter Club. I'm like, it's kind of like a detective thing. It's kind of like what's it called? Like just a young adult, you know, we all got to get together and solve the mystery, you know. A friend of mine said, hey, like, don't take offense, but it kind of has like a Scooby-Doo feel. Like everyone comes together and like has to like solve the crime. And I'm like, that's like perfect, you know?
Oh, it's funny because like the Mexican pulp art fiction artwork, their perspectives were all over the place. Like you'd have a lot of someone big in the foreground, but then you know, someone in the background with, like, it didn't make any sense. Like the perspectives didn't make any sense. It wasn't like one scene. It was like they were all over the place. You know what I mean? And then of course there was this big empty space where the title would go. You know what I mean?
And it was funny when Alicia was working on the painting, and then she started seeing, you know, because she worked on the painting over the course of weeks, right? And little by little, illustrations from Jack are coming in, illustrations from Patrick, and I showed her a couple of them, and oh wait, why does she have this, and why, like, that doesn't look like how I drew it, and I'm like, it's
Joe looks
like every single book that's like that, like the cover artist is almost always like different than the, you know, people do the art on the inside. I'm like, everything's like in your mind and in your imagination, and this is just kind of to help your imagination along, and it doesn't have to look exact, you know, but it gets the idea across, you know, and it's okay. And it's funny because like these are kind of like based on Joe and Liz, who are right there. But then someone saw it and was like, "Oh, it's like based on you and Alicia." It's like
Jessica.
Oh yeah, Jessica's. Oh yeah, it looks like the two of you, and it's just kind of a conglomeration of all of that, you know.
I didn't mean for it to look like me, but I will say for Joe, I didn't really have a good picture of Chicago Joe, the real person. So I just kind of like made up a person's face, like a generic person's face, right? And then I was having so much trouble. I wasn't feeling very good. I was having a lot of headaches, and I couldn't get the dude's face right, and it was really bothering me. And finally I was like, it's his nose, and I totally painted over his nose, and Billy was like, what are you doing?
She was like almost done, and she started over.
I like did his whole face over. I was like, his nose doesn't make any sense, it's screwing up everything. So I painted over it, and I didn't even know that I was doing this, but I unconsciously painted Billy's nose in my... And so that's why it looks so much like Billy. And I look at him like, yeah, that's Billy's nose. I didn't mean for it to, but
yeah.
If anyone's wondering why it looks like Billy, it's because I painted his nose without even realizing it.
The whole thing's a funny process, you know. Like one thing that I realized, like after the whole book was written and we're doing the illustrations, I'm like, oh, I really like how people look with glasses. Every single one of my characters has glasses. Like I need to go back and make some of the characters not have glasses, and I think there was an illustration that someone did that where like Joe's wearing glasses and Alicia's like, should I give him glasses? I'm like, no. like Elizabeth will have glasses. Joe doesn't need glasses. I went back, found one sentence where I made him say, oh, sometimes I wear them, sometimes I don't. That's plausible. Sometimes people wear glasses, sometimes they don't. Like, you know what I mean? But
Sometimes they have names
like,
that rhyme.
What's that?
Sometimes they have names that rhyme.
Right.
Sometimes they do or don't wear glasses.
Hey, he did a lot of drugs in his hippie days.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
it was stressful because I was like, she has her hair up. Do I have her hair up? Does she have her hair in a bun?
Like sometimes her hair is up, sometimes her hair is down. It's okay.
What?
Hey, it's 8:00. We've been talking for an hour. I feel like I've been talking a lot. I'm having fun. But is there anything anyone else wants to talk about or bring up?
Yes, I have questions for you, Bill. Okay, did you talk to Mike Gunleroy and Aaron Comerbus about this?
Okay, so the three kind of main side zinester characters in the book are Mike Gunderloy, who did Fact Sheet 5. John Marr is mentioned. He did Murder Can Be Fun. And then Aaron Comet Bus, who did Comet Bus. This is another one of those loophole, plot hole things that worked out really well. The whole story is about trying to find this issue of Fact Sheet 5. And then at some point, they're trying to get a hold of Aaron Comet Bus. And for them to be easily accessible would have ruined the story. Like, if you could just call Mike and be like, hey, Mike, whatever happened to Fact Sheet 5, number 5? Like, then there's no book. Like, the whole mystery is gone. What worked out really, really well is that I don't know how to get a hold of Mike Gunderloy, and I tried to get a hold of him, and he is nowhere to be found. There's a guy named Jason Luther, who's a zine friend of mine, and he does a website, the Fact Sheet 5 archive, that has, like, a bunch of back issues. And I thanked him in the beginning of the book because he was the person that I was like, hey, which issue would have been hard to find, and which issue had this, and at what point, and like his website had like all this Fact Sheet 5 information, which was really, really helpful and wonderful. But I asked him, I'm like, how can I get a hold of Mike? I kind of want to see what he thinks of me putting him in the story. And once again, I don't think I owe anything to anyone. I can write whatever I want. But within the culture of zines, I want to be respectful of everyone, and I want to be friends with everyone. So I don't want to write something that's going to really just piss off one of my idols, right? And Mike Gunderloy's Fact Sheet 5 was so important. So I wanted to get a hold of him beforehand, and then after the book was done, I wanted to get a hold of him to send him a copy. and I don't know how to get a hold of him. And Jason gave me he's like, here's 6 different emails he's used at different points, and none of them went anywhere, So I did not contact Mike. I would, if anyone knows how to get a hold of him, send him a copy. John Marr, I'm pen pals with, so I sent him a copy of the book after it was done. Aaron Comet Bus is the character that is actually in the book. He has dialogue, and there's a lot of things in the book I say about him that are totally true, and then there's some things that are totally made up, and there's some things maybe it's true, maybe it's not true, I don't even know. And he was one I was actually kind of nervous about. He's the most famous zinester there is, and I've been doing zines forever, and I've read his stuff forever, but he and I have never interacted. I've never met him, I've never sent him an email. But I specifically tracked him down, and he also is difficult to track down, but it's possible. It's just a slow process, right? So I sent him an early one, and then I didn't hear back from him for a couple weeks, and I was like, oh my God, he probably hates it. He thinks I'm a jerk. He's going to ask me to take him out of the book, and I will take him out of the book, but it'll be really complicated. And then one day I just got a postcard that said, hey man, love the rough draft. You have my blessing, do whatever. And so I was like, cool, he's good with it. And then since then, we've exchanged a couple letters about it. And Aaron basically said, it was really weird reading dialogue about myself, so I kind of skimmed over that. But it seems like a really fun novel. No problem. It's great that you did it. It's cool. So I mailed him a copy of the final finished. I don't know if he got it or has read the final. But he was super cool with everything. So
shout out to Jessica to helping us get in touch with Aaron too.
Yeah, Jessica used to know Aaron back in the day and kind of gave me some leads of oh, here's an address you might be able to write to him, and so that was helpful. And Aaron's not a total recluse, but he's not, and again, it works out good for the book. He's someone that you can track down, but it's not easy to track down, which is exactly how the character in the book is. And then Mike is someone that's impossible to track down, which also works out good for the book. So zinesters being weirdos works out really well.
Okay, my next question for you is, are there plot lines that you had to ditch that you were like, this would be great, but...
Nothing major, just some little details. Nicole Morning in real life has a daughter, and so the Nikki Knightley character, at the beginning, I had her having a daughter, which would kind of give you more sympathy for her, but then I thought that was kind of a little bit too complicated, and kind of, I don't know, I didn't want to have too much sympathy for her, so I erased that out. No, I think there's more things that I added in than took out. In the original, the Henry character was definitely the bad guy, but when I was doing a revision, I was like, oh, there was this big, the Great Copy Fire of 1984, which is totally fabricated.
I was gonna say, is that real?
Yeah, that's totally made up. But I was like, oh, his father's copy shop burned down. Of course, Henry got injured in the fire and it burned his hand and he may never draw again. And it seemed so obvious. Why wasn't this in the rough draft? This should have been the first thing I thought of. But because why is he so mad about he's obviously mad that his dad's shop burned down, but it physically injured him, scarred him for life. He was 9 years old. And so that was something I added in that I thought was a really big boost to the motivation of the character.
There's a character that's based on you. Can you talk about that, please?
Yes. So, I have a character of Willie DeBall, which is just Billy McCall. So it's Willie DeBall, and he's runs a zine distro out of Albuquerque, and I just realized I had some sort of backstory for him, and he was definitely in the story more at different points, and then I took a lot of it out because I'm he just needs to be kind of this mysterious money man that hey, Chicago Joe, wherever you gotta fly, I got you, whatever you need to do. He's just Chicago Joe's, because I feel with the Indiana Jones, where does Indiana Jones get his money? He's literally flying all over the world, but I guess he works at a university and the university pays for it, but he doesn't seem rich, but rich people invest in him, right? So I'm okay, I need a zinester that's investing in Chicago Joe. So I'm okay, Willie DeBall runs this amazing zine distro called Zines, and Chicago Joe just has a credit card, just put it on my tab, and that seems totally ridiculous, but I think it's really funny. And I had some sort of plot line about how the Willie DeBall character like won the lottery and got like all this money, and I definitely had more details on that I kind of just like, we don't need all these details, like he's just a side character. But yes, Willie DeBall is based on me.
He made it all at the tables.
What's that?
He made it all at the tables.
Exactly, yeah, you know, knows the ins and outs of the casino biz, so. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else anyone wants to chit chat about? I think we're winding down here.
Billy, thank you so much for writing this wonderful book and for just being this creative monster that you are. It's a prolific writer and publisher and creator.
I mean, thank you for everything you do, and thank you to everyone that has read it or eventually plans to read it, you know. Get to it when you can get to it, no rush. It was one of the most fun, it was like the most fun I think I've ever had writing a book, so I hope it's fun to read. I've written a lot of like serious things and political things and stuff like that, and all of that has its place, but for this I'm like, I just want something that's just like silly, just fun, funny, like you're excited for the next chapter. I tried to do little cliffhangers at the end of the chapter, like, oh my god, who's there now? And you know, just kind of, sometimes it's really relaxing and beneficial just to read a silly book, you know, that doesn't matter too much. It's just fun.
Well, I read the first chapter in like the half hour I had before starting the live stream, and I like literally can't wait to read the next chapter, for real. Like I was like, wow, I can't wait to read this book. And now like times 10 after this, hanging out with all of you and hearing more about it. So
I feel like you should do an audiobook version of it.
I was thinking the exact same thing. I was going to say, Billy, when are you going to record the audio version, the audiobook?
That's not a bad idea. I'll tell you the problem
Should totally
I
do
have
it.
with that. I get overwhelmed. Like, would I do just me reading the book, or would I put like tires screeching and gunshots, and like, do I add in all the sound effects and make it like a radio play, or do I just do me reading the book and then just decide?
Can we read our own lines, Bill?
What's that?
I said, can we read our own lines?
That's a
That'd be
fun
project.
idea. You should do that.
Right? That would be awesome.
If I could get everyone on, you know what? Maybe, yeah. If I could get everyone on board, then you got to start. Yeah, we'll think about this. That's a pretty good idea. I think it would be really fun. I'll keep that as a maybe. My mom read the book, and my mom was really, really great. My mom was texting me, and then she would text me, because I did at the beginnings of the chapters, I did the little maps, right? Because I've been reading all summer, I've been reading fantasy novels, and I love at the beginning of a fantasy novel when there's like a map of like, you know, the Lord of the Rings map or the Game of Thrones map. And I didn't need that for this, and it takes place in different places, but I was like, oh, like maybe for each chapter it'll be a little clue of like, oh, this takes place in Chicago, this is in San Francisco. And it was really fun, and my mom would like text me like, oh, I just looked up that Gino's East, that's a real pizza place. I'm like, yeah. And like my mom was like researching, and then she would like, I think this place, like, what about this, that's not real, is it? And my mom was texting me, but my mom wasn't able to make the Zoom thing here tonight, but she emailed me like a little review of my book, and one of the things she said is, she's like, I think there should be a sequel, you need to do another one. Because now that Joe and Liz are married, like, what kind of life are they going to have? Is it going to be all zines all the time? And, like, my mom wants to find out what happens to Joe and Elizabeth. And even gave me a couple plot ideas. So, I don't know. Maybe at some point there'll be another one. But I think I need to take at least a year off.
Happily ever after.
Oh, let me backtrack real quick. Because, Liz, you asked me about plot lines that I didn't use. Two things with your characters. One, so in real life, karaoke is a pretty important part of your life, right? Did you meet at a karaoke bar?
Yes.
Okay. And you have karaoke tattoos, and did you have a karaoke themed wedding? Am I making that up?
This is all correct.
Okay, so because in the book, I'm like, oh, they had a karaoke themed wedding. I'm like, I think that really happened, or at least it's plausible. I definitely mentioned karaoke a couple times in the thing, like the made up coffee shop. Is it Ground Down? I called it. or the daily grind. What did I call it?
I don't
Some
remember.
some coffee pun. I can't remember the name of it.
Ground
Ground
down.
But I mentioned like, oh, they do karaoke on the weekends, and I mentioned karaoke 2 or 3 times. But originally, I definitely had like I was gonna have you guys go to like a karaoke bar, but then I decided to switch it to Gino's East because I felt like, oh, if they're doing a karaoke bar, like that would be really romantic. But actually, like that's gonna be kind of distracting from the story because it's all gonna be about like, well, what songs are they singing and who's doing this and like. But I definitely had karaoke as being more involved. And so I kind of like trimmed some of that out. And the other plot line, so a lot of times in all these like stupid Pulp Fiction books and also in movies, like the main character has like a kryptonite. Like, oh, this is the one thing they can, like Marty McFly, don't ever call him chicken. Like, oh, look out, if you call him chicken, And so I was gonna have the Chicago Joe. His kryptonite was gonna be Malort, and like, I actually wrote a scene where he was like fighting with Chops, and Chops like threw like Malort on him, and it was just like, so, like he was like blinded by the Malort. It was like such a terrible. I was gonna have it be like he's Mr. Chicago. What do you mean he can't drink Malort? Like, no, Malort, like that's his kryptonite. He can't handle it. And like. It'd be so ironic if the guy from Chicago can't drink the Chicago alcohol, and it was like a little bit too much. And so I just made it like in one chapter, like the bartender offers him Malort. He's like, no, like let's just do Maker's Mart. And then the next day, Chops like makes a joke out of it. He's like, I didn't have any Malort, it like makes him mad. But after that, I kind of dropped the Malort angle. So I thought that was a little bit much. So yeah. But yeah, maybe an audiobook at some point, and maybe a sequel at some point. We'll see. Oh, I want to talk about one more thing, and then we can go. It's already almost 8:30. I think everybody got a Quimby's newsletter. Did you guys like the Quimby's newsletter?
I loved it, and also you included like some scraps of the map, like so you gave us a couple copies of the newsletter, but then tucked inside the pages of the book were like what looked like maybe
the original drawings of the maps.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's 31 chapters, and so a couple of the maps get repeated of these little maps. I don't know why, but for some reason I thought it would be kind of cool to have the original, but also I wanted people to know that I drew a map by hand. It wasn't a computer map because I kind of cleaned it up and scanned it and stuff, but I'm like, I drew them out by hand, and I was kind of proud of all my little maps. So, the first, 25 people that bought a book, like, I included like a little, one of the original drawings, which I just thought would be kind of a fun thing. And then the Quimby's newsletter, my original idea was to only make 100 of them and then never do it again. But they're so cool that I think I've decided like anyone that kind of like buys one directly from me, because the problem is, and I don't know, because I gave you extras because you're at Quimby's and it's about Quimby's, but I don't know if it's been a problem, but like when it's on a shelf, I would imagine they're just falling out and making a mess. So I'm sort of like, well, for the ones that are going to a bookstore, I probably don't want to include this, but if someone's buying it from me and I can mail it to them or buying it in real life. But I really like the fake little newsletter that I made.
It was cute. It was really cute.
All right, well, I guess that's it. Any last questions or comments?
Just thank you so much for putting me in my cat in your book. It was really an honor, and this has been so much fun tonight too. Thanks.
Thank you for making us fiction.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate it, man.
You're very welcome, all of you. It's all out of a place of love because I love all of you here in the room and in the virtual room. Thank you for coming to my virtual release party. Thanks for looking at my book and reading my book and supporting me all these years. Have a good night, everybody.
Love you,
Thank you so much, everybody. We love you so much.
So much fun. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye. I don't know if the live stream is still going or not. But.
I'm just like showing some final
This
screens.
is our cat.
Oh, I was gonna jump. I got very distracted and excited by the zine cat. What is your zine cat?
This is Matsu.
Hi, Matsu. Oh my gosh.
I can't believe she's here. She's usually very shy.
There's Matsu.
There she is.
Oh my goodness.
It's short for matsutake, which is a type of mushroom.
She's
She's like, "Are you done yet? Feed me."
He's like, it's time for my live stream.
Exactly.
I probably could just do this and we get more views than an actual.
How old is she?
She's 3.5,
Aw.
going on 4.
Jessica, that was just here. Jessica comes over about once a week to our house, and Matsu is not very good with strangers, but she loves Jessica.
She loves Jessica.
Little Matsutake.
She likes to sit on this chair and just kind of like put both legs.
My swivel chair.
Yeah. Your spot.
It's a perfect spot.
Thank you, Perry.
Thank you very much, Perry. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks you guys for being awesome. It's so fun to do these and like hang out with all these people. It's the best.
It was so fun talking to you, Joe, Liz, everybody.
Thank you. It's so good to talk to you guys about this. This is great.
Yeah, this was super fun.
We'll be in Chicago December 30th. And maybe we'll get to share some Malort. I almost regret saying that.
I am so glad that you bought us shots of Malort, but I don't need it again.
Yeah, maybe no more Malort.
But I am so happy to. I had never even heard of it. I never even knew what it was. So I was so happy that you did that. It was great. What was funny about that night is that we'd had a really good meal and a really delicious. I don't even remember the dessert.
Oh, the meal was so
but
good.
we had like this really sweet like candy dessert. It was so good. And then we did Malort. It just like wiped out all the good taste. It just erased like an hour of meal.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that just destroyed the deliciousness of eating at the Chicago diner.
Yeah. We're coming into town for the Chicago Blackhawks game. They're doing the Winter Classic. They're playing at Wrigley Field on New Year's Eve.
That's a thing.
Oh, okay.
Wow, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
see
you-
it. Let's see it.
So we'll be